Top 5 coaches searching for a ring. Number 5, James Franklin at Penn State. One of the most well-thought-of coaches in the country, but they haven't even won the Big Ten since he's been there. And every time a job comes up like USC or Oregon or somewhere else, James Franklin's name is mentioned whether he's a candidate or not, and he's an excellent coach. But, it's getting to the time where, before we start putting him in this upper tier, like he's got to win the conference. He's got to, maybe compete in the playoff. Now with 12 teams coming, I'm sure that'll happen for Penn State more often now, but even still hasn't, as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody out there, but I don't think he's won the conference at Penn State since Ohio State and Michigan have won it since he's been the coach there pretty much exclusively.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, we can look it up.
Yeah,
see the list of Big Ten champions, but no, I think you're right. And obviously, a guy that is very well thought of. A lot of rumors swirling around him, as you mentioned, over the years. But he's stayed put in Happy Valley, and those schools went other directions. And I think USC in particular, that was a hot and heavy rumored place for him for a while. But Lincoln Riley makes a lot of sense for them, and that looks like it's going pretty well. But, yeah, certainly you'd love to jump up and go ahead.
Yes, they won in 2016.
There you go.
There you
go.
So,
yeah, he has done it. So I guess taking it to the next level would be, winning it and getting into the playoff and seeing what you can do there. And I know there's a lot of people optimistic about them heading into this season, so maybe this is the year that they do that with Drew Aller there taking over at quarterback for Sean Clifford and all the rest they've got coming back. I mean, there's a lot of buzz for the Nittany Lions right now. But, yeah, so he did win it. It sounded strange, but I didn't know for sure, so good for him.
Yeah. Number 4, Chip Kelly. Came real close at Oregon, but ran up against Urban Meyer and an Ohio State team that was just humming on all cylinders. Zeke Elliott tore them up in that game. It was in Dallas. Actually, he wasn't even the coach then. That was the year after. So he had not even been that. But he'd won conference titles at Oregon. I just remember seeing him there because I was there. But yeah, Chip Kelly's not one. He built teams at Oregon. He's seemingly got UCLA on a roll. But this is a guy who was really well thought of, but also no ring yet in Chip Kelly, and has been a coach for a long time. Thought of as an innovator. Had a couple stints in the NFL before he's bounced back now here at UCLA on their way to the Big Ten next year. And I wonder, can he get UCLA to the level he had Oregon at before he left and took that job, especially going to the new conference? Is this something? But he's a guy who, when he was at Oregon, was coming close, and at UCLA appears to have built something, on the up here, but been a guy who's been in this a long time and is a big name and just still doesn't have one.
So I'm assuming based on the number 5, they were talking national titles here?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he's a guy who's knocked on that door, been wildly successful. I don't love his chances moving forward in the Big Ten, though. I mean, with UCLA. Had a great run last year. I think, he's a heck of a football coach, but that's going to be hard to come by. If he wins a national title as a Big Ten member with UCLA, that will be Hall of Fame, top line, headline stuff there. But I'm not holding my breath with all that. But I think that they're very intriguing, even more so than USC in so many ways about, what they're heading into from a football perspective.
Yeah, Mark Herzlich was the coach at Oregon that year with Marcus Mariota. But I was there covering the game, and I was in the auxiliary.
Helfrich, right?
Yeah, Herzlich is the linebacker. Thank you. Helfrich was there, and so I was on the elevator going down to the media room, and we stopped on the floor that Chip Kelly was watching from the suite, and he and someone else got on, and they were just obviously disappointed that Oregon had lost the game.
Sure.
And was really, like, he was grumpy, and justifiably so. Number 3, Jim Harbaugh. This is a guy who, back-to-back conference titles, in the playoff a couple times, but Michigan fans desperately want to see him take that leap, and has not. Last year, the TCU game was, I'm sure, wildly disappointing, and I think that they as a team, and especially as a fan base, thought like, oh, well, we're lucky we got the little upstart before we play Georgia, or I guess potentially Ohio State again. But yeah, this is a guy who, needs one. I mean, to maybe legitimize his run at Michigan, especially as much as he flirted with going back to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he's there. He's there to win Big Ten titles and hopefully national titles as well. It's been a little while since '97 for them. So, that's the validation that's missing at this point for him is the big one. And, certainly they've done it regularly enough in Columbus since the Wolverines got their last one that it's growing by the day, that urgency and that need to win one. But I don't know. I think he cooled off a lot of talk last year with what they did, even if it ended up, with a bad loss there at the end. I mean, and let's not act like TCU just came out and just kicked their ass and just left them in the dust and never looked back. I mean, that game ended up being wildly competitive, and it was just the story of TCU was eking out every single close game except for the Big 12 title game. It was the first and only time all year they didn't win a close game. The only time was that game. So, Michigan, I think probably left that one with their head spinning a little bit because that was not what was expected. But, I mean, they're a good program. They're strong right now. And, I don't know if they're so strong as to be the last team standing when all's said and done. But, yeah, that's definitely a missing piece on his resume.
Number 2, Brian Kelly, all-time winningest coach at Notre Dame. Got them to the championship game against Alabama one year. And, it never got to the total mountaintop with him there before it appeared that both sides kind of were ready to move on from one another. And now he's taken the job at LSU, and he is – I mean, look, there's one goal there at LSU, and that's to win the national title. And – to me, this is a team that wants to win national titles, a coach that appears to be capable of doing it, or at least getting his team there, and maybe the step taking him from over the hump was being at a place like LSU, Garrett, in that, it's just a little bit easier to get your players into school at LSU than it is at Notre Dame. And I think that was one of the things he was running up against. And he wanted to make the jump to the SEC, had a really, really excellent first year and got his team, which nobody expected to be, in the SEC title game. But he's got one job, and that's to win a national title.
No doubt he does. I mean, when you look at – that's the crazy thing when you look at all these coaches is LSU's the only – program where every coach ahead of him has a national championship. So, the bar is set there. And then when you look across the athletic department as well, it's not just – the standard's different because you have a women's basketball team that's won a natty. The baseball team's still going. It's different than what he was dealing with at Notre Dame. I just hope he can do it for my sake, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, he is – Ed Orgeron won that title because he was part of recruiting a bunch of really good players, and then they got Joe Burrow out of the transfer portal. But the reason he's not there anymore is he was not an organizer, and the program was pretty disorganized. Brian Kelly is really good at all that, off the field, behind the scenes type administrative stuff that builds modern programs into consistent winners, because that's what he did at Notre Dame and reinvented himself after he had kind of hit a wall. So for all the personality people may not like about Brian Kelly, I mean, the proof's in the pudding, and the only thing he has left to do is win that title. So
yeah, I think y'all said pretty much it all. But, yeah, that's something that's missing, and he did a great job in year 1 in Baton Rouge. Let's see what he does in round 2. But I think it's only upward trajectory from here. I mean, the record might not be as solid every single year. There'll be little dips and valleys, but no reason to believe he can't go win the big one at LSU. I see no reason why not.
Yeah, absolutely. And number 1, Lincoln Riley. I mean, how many Heisman Trophy winners can you have and not win the thing? Not that everybody who has the Heisman Trophy winner wins it, but usually guys who have multiple ones have. And if they can ever get it figured out on defense, I mean, honestly, if he can ever get it figured out on defense, he might win 6 of them. He's an excellent, excellent coach, but so far hasn't got it figured out in defense, and that's what undone them at Oklahoma. It's what undid them at the end of last year. At the end of that, and Caleb Williams getting hurt against Utah, but even still, I don't know. So say Caleb Williams doesn't get hurt, and USC is in that title game, or is in that first game against Georgia. I don't know if they would have done much better than Ohio State did, just because Georgia was a juggernaut.
Dude, Ohio State almost beat Georgia.
Yeah, true, yeah.
True. Let's not trick. They could have beaten Georgia that night. That wasn't a. we think Georgia just kicked everybody's ass. That was not a butt kicking like that. The Buckeyes very well could have found themselves in a title
they make
game.
the field goal. What I'm saying is I'm just
saying in general.
Yeah,
it's all right.
I just can't assume that they would have gone into one instead of Ohio State and beaten Georgia. They would have had the same problems everybody else did with Georgia, and how they adapted. Ohio State had the best run, and everybody's still mad at Ryan Day for it. But when Ohio State and Mizzou were the two teams this year that actually had a chance to maybe beat, Georgia, and no one else did. But yeah, I mean, he's right there, and I just wonder, what it's going to take for him to fix his team to make it more balanced so that they can make those runs consistently.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I guess everybody's wondering about him at this point. But start with winning a playoff game. That would be a start because he hasn't done that yet either, much less win a national title. But, I mean, they're set up really well. It's going to be a more interesting field they're entering, obviously, much like with UCLA, but to an even greater degree because more is expected of the Trojans in this arena. But, I mean, they have no excuses. They've got the money. They've got the talent base. They've got the facilities and the coaches, and it seems like everything, all the Hollywood stuff and everything that Lincoln had in Norman and more. I mean, really, maybe there's a couple of, things here that the per diems are, I'm sure there's something Oklahoma did that was slightly better, but I mean, there's no reason why he can't go win a title at USC, and that is something that he needs to do before all is said and done. But other than that, that's the only thing he hasn't done. He's done all the rest of it. So he's a great coach. Yeah, he's a fantastic coach. If you told me you can have one coach to build your program for, and he's not going to leave for 20 years because he's young, and I mean that's the guy I'd pick. I mean there's no one else. You have one, it's Lincoln Riley, because I think he'll eventually get it figured out. I do too. But dude's very young still.
41 years old or
look
something.
At him
like that.
Next to Chip and Brian Kelly, for God's sakes. I mean, look at that. He's of a different era. So yeah, he's got a little bit of time, and he's in a great spot. And they're just really getting started. He only had 1 year under his belt, and already brought a Heisman Trophy winner to LA. So they're going to be fun to watch this year, for better or worse. Yeah, absolutely. By the way,